Good afternoon and welcome. This is called live radio, folks. That was me trying to get through. This is Pastor Jerry Cook with Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station. Thanks for tuning in to the radio show that talks about the two things that's what we talk about in public. But guess what? We're going to talk about religion and politics, and yes, they indeed do mix. We've got two great guests that are coming on the show here shortly. In just a minute, we're going to be talking to Dr. Andrew Sandlin, who is the president and the founder of the Center for Cultural Leadership. And the Center for Cultural Leadership believes that culture should be Christian, not Muslim, not Buddhist, but Christian. And we believe that not by political coercion. So we'll be talking about the Center for Cultural Leadership and Dr. Andrew Sandlin in just a few moments. Also, a little bit later, and I think this will be important for those of you out there that are always looking at the new bills that are coming out of Sacramento. We often think that the previous horrible bill could not be upped in any way. But unfortunately, the legislatures in Sacramento have outdone themselves. AB 495, it is called a child traffickers and kidnappers dream bill. And basically, the bill's language applies to any child for any reason, regardless of immigrant status. We're going to be talking to Erin Friday, who is a licensed California attorney and co-leader of Our Duty USA, which is an international coalition fighting to protect children from gender ideology. We'll be talking to her at the bottom of the hour about AB 495. If you haven't heard of what that bill is about, you definitely want to stick around to hear what that bill is about and make sure that the legislature is on the right side of this. On this afternoon is Dr. Andrew Sandlin with the Center for Cultural Leadership. Dr. Sandlin, how are you today?
I'm doing great. It's a blessing to talk to you, my friend.
Absolutely. Are you in the great state of California right now, or are you somewhere else in our great nation?
I am in the great Orthodox, conservative, Bible-believing, right-wing state of California. That's facetious. You know, the only redeeming value about this is I live, and the CCL offices are in a very conservative county. So a lot of people that are outside California don't know that by land area, as is true with almost all other states, the state is widely conservative. Not always Christian, but certainly politically conservative. So, yes, I'm in California. Look forward to seeing you on Sunday.
Absolutely. Just by way of shameless plug here, Dr. Sandlin will be at the Freedom's Way Baptist Church Sunday for our Christ and Culture Sunday. Encourage you folks to go on to freedomswaybaptistchurch.org and check out and service times if you'd like to hear and see and shake hands with Dr. Andrew Sandlin. So would you tell our listeners, Dr. Sandlin, about the Center for Cultural Leadership and how it came about?
Sure. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. We're having our 25th anniversary, silver anniversary conference in early December, and you, my friend, I believe will be there. It'll be a privilege to have you there. So, I should tell you first, is a Christian educational foundation. Some people call it a Christian think tank. We influence people preaching and teaching and writing using all media and any other legitimate media that are available. But the objective is to influence Christians to influence culture outside the family, outside the church, in distinctively Christian ways. Now, kind of the positive. The negative side, which I must bring up, is that we disagree with and oppose the notion that many Christians hold and have held, that the faith is basically about their private devotional life, their personal relationship and walk with the Lord, and, of course, family devotions, and church on Sunday, and sometimes Sunday night, Wednesday, whenever church is. Our view is that since Jesus Christ is Lord of all things, the mission was given to disciple all nations. Since Jesus taught his disciples to pray, Lord, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, that limit his lordship to just church and family, and that usually reduces Jerry to between somebody's two ears. We have our own sort of private faith. CCL is basically a protest against that, and we do a lot of writing and teaching and influencing people to break outside that realm, frankly, like you do, and I'm very grateful for that, press the claims of Christianity and, of course, God's holy law and his word in the wider society. That kind of is the short answer to your excellent question.
And would you say the Center for Cultural Leadership influence now post-COVID than maybe pre-COVID?
No, I think it's no one's asked me that, but I've given that idea thought. I believe it's more simply because, as others were, I'm not saying we're the only ones standing for the truth, don't have an Elijah complex, but we were among those ministries that stood up strongly and opposed the various mandates, the padlock the church mandates, and of course the various other and so on, and stressed the lordship of Christ. And I guess here is the key and the link between your last question and this, that Jesus isn't just Lord of the but the civil magistrates, call them today politicians, are required to govern according to God's law in the Word of God. And we believe quite clearly that God authorized them. Many of them stood on the right side. Most of them capitulated on this issue to the so-called experts. They did not stand as they should operate according to God's law. Most of them, of course, are unbelievers, but even some professed Christians that among magistrates caved in. I think the fact that we stood by God rather firmly and articulated a very thoughtful approach to this, that people we've kind of earned an additional hearing.
I know that one of the things that on your website is that you are, quote, spearheading a new Christian culture. Explain that a little bit, and is that cross-denomination? Agenda that this would be a new Christian culture across denominational lines?
Yes. Boy, thanks for asking. Remarkable, Jerry, how few Christians are even interested in that topic, despite the fact that we have a vast history in the West of Christian culture. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, on the basic level, I just mean that Christianity pervades every aspect of life. And by every aspect, I mean it pervades what we call today popular culture, education, science, technology, politics, art. Just mention some of the great artists and architects of all time were Christian truth to shape what they did. People will sometimes laugh and say, well, where in the Bible do you find specifics about architecture? Well, I just happened to be reading this in my private time, Exodus and Leviticus. And particularly Exodus, God apparently is quite interested in architecture when he spoke, of course, about creation, Israel's creation of the tabernacle, and of course later on, under Solomon, the temple. So my point is that while the Bible doesn't get specific on all these, it provides us a way of thinking, a worldview that shapes everything we do. Well, when Christians act according to that and apply the faith in all of these areas of life, I don't care whether they're writing code or selling cars or digging ditches or teaching, whatever the case may be, if they think Christianly, that's a good way to put it, if they act Christianly, then they're creating a Christian culture. Now, the second part of your question, the answer is yes. Christian culture does not mean that we're a particular denomination, Baptist or Presbyterian or Pentecostal or whatever. If we have a Christian culture, I'm not suggesting a movement. Certainly not the way that's understood. I'm saying that all the churches have to get together, get rid of their own church distinctives for this purpose. There would be separate churches who maintain their distinctives. But on many cultural issues, they present a united front in pressing the faith in all areas of life. So it is cross-denominational.
Absolutely. And also, I think it's important for our listeners to also understand that the objective of cultural leadership is not so much to train Christian activists, because obviously there are lots of people that are doing that effectively and to stay effective. But the whole point of CCL is to educate and equip Christians to be transformists. Is that more properly understood?
That's a good way to put it. We have seen, you and I have both lived through a time in which we've had a lot of political activism among Christians, basically revived life the 70s with Jerry Falwell, moral majority. And looking back on it, I would say a lot of that was healthy. I would say not all of it was healthy. The notion that Christians have is an assuming they kind of believe in a messianic politics. If we can just get a particular Christian elected, then that will solve society's problems. Let me acknowledge we need more Christians, well, I should say this, Jerry, more effective Bible-believing and Bible-obeying Christians elected. I totally support that. But the notion that, for example, if we get all Christians elected tomorrow, that's going to change present culture's view on the acceptance of homosexuality. No, you see, that's a cultural issue. The battle over homosexual marriage, well, it's not really marriage, but what's called homosexual marriage, wasn't lost in 2015 with Obergefell. That just put the final stamp on it. It was lost in living rooms with TV shows, routinized homosexual living. And so it was thought by most people, they just assumed that homosexuality is just a little different. It's like being left-handed. It's no big deal. And it's because people little by little began to accept that thinking that the Supreme Court at the time said, yes, it's okay for a man to marry a man and a woman to marry a woman. But much, not all by any means, but much of the culture had come to accept it. You see, that's a cultural issue that became a political issue, and that's the way it usually works. Our goal is to influence the culture to influence politics.
The situation there about normalizing homosexuality, I believe I shared that was written by Justin Taylor with the Gospel Coalition, and it was the article entitled "The Remarkably Successful 7-Point from 40 years ago to Normalize Homosexuality." And for years, this is before I even read this article, Dr. Sandlin, but I have been saying for years in this church that one of the most effective ways to get a culture to accept a vice is to laugh at it. And that normalize that particular vice in one's life, and then it gets more serious after that once you start laughing at it. I used to say that in the 1970s, the big deal was Soap, that TV show Soap with Billy Crystal. He was the gay character in that, and of course everyone laughed at that. And then the 80s, you had with a faux homosexual character with John. And then in the 90s and early 2000s, it really, really wrapped up to where, of course, we have the Obergefell decision in 2015 making gay marriage legal here in the United States of America. And then, of course, as our friend Doug Wilson likes to say, it's mirage, right?
Yeah.
So, but the fact is, I think that the Center for Cultural Leadership, I think, one of the premier organizations, as it has been, I think even more important post-COVID going forward, because I think more and more Christian cross-denominational lines are starting to realize, and I think COVID was the eye-opening thing for them. They realized, I've sat on my hands. My eschatology perhaps played a part in me not getting involved, and so therefore I need to lay some of that stuff aside and just listen to the biblical mandate to coerce folks via the sword of the Spirit, not so much coercion in another way, if you get my drift.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. I think what happened at COVID is many good Christians who were on the sidelines simply sort of by default. Their view was, well, yes, there's some bad things in culture, but I think things are going to be okay. Okay thus far. I think what it did, I think, shook them. It riveted them to know, well, if we sit on the sideline, we all Bible-believing denominations and groups, if we sit on the sideline and do nothing, then that's going to create a vacuum that Satan and his minions, and his followers among humanity, are going to rush in to fill. And that's exactly what happened. It happened with COVID. It happened, of course, decades ago with abortion. It's happening with homosexuality, the obligatory. You may have known TV shows or movies. There's almost always the obligatory quote gay, using language like you were talking about, Jerry, like it's sort of funny. The obligatory so-called gay character who's witty and wise. And generally, if there's anybody that's anti-homosexual, it's generally somebody, a country bumpkin, a very uneducated person, or a abusing priest or something like that. So basically, the gays are cool and the straights are sort of weird and are backwards.
Yeah.
And that's essential. By the way, and that's why I'm saying that while we need to strongly work to win elections, winning elections alone is not going to solve that problem. That problem is Christians who are involved in the culture and preaching the gospel, influencing entire culture according to God's word to change people's thinking. So they come to be repulsed. That's a good way to put it. Repulsed by this act. And when that happens, then the culture and politics will start changing.
Absolutely. Let me get your on one of the hot button assembly bill items that I'm going to be tackling here in the bottom of the next hour, and that's the Assembly Bill 495, ludicrously titled the Family Preparedness Plan Act 2025. And the whole point of this bill, which was already voted out of Assembly and is now in the hands of the state Senate, is all about basically saying that if you are a child that is attending a state-run school and your parents happen to be, say, immigrants, and then they get detained by ICE while you are at school, then practically anybody can come and sign a little affidavit that basically takes custody of your kid. Have you heard of this bill, Dr. Sandlin?
I have. I have not read the bill and not investigated it as much as you have, but it certainly is draconian. This is another example of the left's, and of course the California legislature has since, I'm trying to think how many years, I think it's been since the 90s, maybe even earlier, that it's been really under the control of left than that. Always had a strong influence. But, yeah, so that essentially is an assault on the family, and that's been a leftist tactic for generations now, to assault the family and to create a sexually culture. You see, the left is attempting to destroy all hierarchies. Hierarchy, of course, began in Genesis 1, and frankly, because the left is God, they have to attack the created order, they have to attack creational institutions like marriage, redemptive institutions like the church. If the left could, Jerry, I'm convinced they would climb up to heaven and knock God off his throne because he is the great hierarchy. They want to destroy hierarchy in the family of parents, the hierarchy of husbands and wives, the loving leadership of a husband in a family, the wife's godly, kind submission to her husband in the church, leadership in the church, all the way across the board. This bill, to me, is one example of that leftist hatred for hierarchy.
And it's interesting to me that because the progressive left is so anti-hierarchical in many ways, because they cannot attack himself, they are going to now burn in effigy everything that God has had his fingerprints on, much like abortion, bills, things of that. In other words, this is their way of burning the thing in effigy.
It is. It's interesting. You probably have known this. There's a fascinating there's actually one from Marx and, of course, his co-author Engels of the Communist Manifesto. It was Engels, and again, Marx echoed this, who said, Marxism, of course, this cannot, that is their ideology, their satanic, secular ideology, cannot succeed unless we destroy the family. That's part of what Marxism intended to do, to destroy the authority of the family, leadership in the family. And that really is Satan's program. Now, I want to make to undermine and destroy the church. That's obvious. But I must tell you, Jerry, I think his guns are leveled more even than against the church, because if he can destroy the family, the church will be easy for him to destroy. And that's what's been happening. That's where the real battle is, the battle over these families. All family issues, pervasiveness of pornography and abortion and same-sex so-called marriage, or as Douglas says, all of these issues, the bill that you're talking about. It's remarkable how many of these so-called controversial social issues are really basically family issues. They really are, because Satan attacks the family.
Absolutely. Well, we got one more minute here, Dr. Sandlin. What can folks expect should they come this Sunday to Freedom's Way Baptist Church for and Culture Sunday?
Well, I think that in Sunday school, I am going to actually, with your permission, practically preach a sermon. And it's going to be on the fact that Christianity is a public faith, and that one of the great problems of our culture today, the reason the depraved things we're talking about, is that we have privatized the faith that is inherently public. And
Oh, did we lose you, Dr. Sandlin?
no, I just heard sounded like a commercial come on.
No, that's okay. No, we're good. I'm going to take a hard break here, Dr. Sandlin. But anyway,
all right. I look forward to seeing you.
Absolutely, Dr. Andrew Sandlin, the founder of the Center. There it is, right there. I didn't have my notes right in front of me, and all of a sudden, that's live radio right there. We will see you this Sunday, sir. Thank you for tuning in to Politics in the Pulpit. We'll see you Sunday.
Everybody, bye-bye.
All right, you have a good day. All right, we're back here on your hometown station. All right, we're back here at the bottom of the hour on Politics in the Pulpit. Again, is your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook, back for another opportunity to talk about all the relevant issues of the day. And one of the most relevant issues, believe it or not, blonde young lady named Sydney Sweeney. Didn't know much about her, to be honest with you, prior to this whole American Eagle blue jean. It's amazing to me that the left hates beauty. That would be the only logical conclusion I can come to, because Sydney Sweeney is obviously a beautiful young lady who is obviously looks good in a pair of blue jeans, and the left has just gone apoplectic upon some of the wording that they took in the that maybe the American Eagle brand is supporting or advocating for eugenics, which ironically is something that the left advocated for against African Americans in the earliest 20th century. Look that up, folks. It's true. And somehow that is also blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and she must be a Nazi. I find it ironic, and maybe Mike, our board op, can interject here. Do you find it ironic, Mike, that the left wants to force on us a Frankenstein individual by the name of Dylan Mulvaney,
right,
and get everyone to drink Bud Light or not drink Bud Light for that matter? They advocate for Dylan Mulvaney. They want us to accept that as completely normal, but yet when a young American woman who is posing in some blue jeans, that gets their ire up.
and of course, blue jeans spelled jeans, Jeans, so it's spelling.
Yeah, it's not jeans as in
Right.
as in your white jeans or your black jeans or your African American jeans.
And when it was revealed that she was Republican,
Yeah, which
it got
was
ramped up.
which added insult to injury for these folks, because all I can say is since the election of 24, and I think you made this point to me yesterday when you texted me, that it seems like the woke culture is gaining the traction that it had for the last 3 to 5 years.
No.
Because we're laughing this off.
Yeah.
In fact, we're to the point where the silliness of it is just like, I can't believe that we all took things like this seriously.
And she hasn't commented either.
And I don't
smart.
should. I think whoever her rep is or whoever is, her manager, I just think it would be great to just let all of us talk about it,
Right.
and then allow the culture to swallow it for what it is, and basically to just move on.
I mean, she's 27 years old, very successful. A long way in a very short time, really, compared to some performers. But the real winner on this, of course, is their stock up 22% the other day.
Their stocks are up. Obviously, people are buying their blue jeans, and that's great. And you know what's funny? So, in the 80s and 90s myself, the big deal back then was Cindy Crawford. Cindy Crawford, obviously a beautiful model, blue jeans. Nobody ever gave that a second thought.
And Brooke Shields.
Brooke Shields.
Probably underage at that point.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, we won't. about
No,
that, Mike.
I'm just saying.
And also Tyra Banks in
Yeah.
the 90s was also somebody who was very. In fact, just a couple years ago, I think I news the other night. They showed a picture of Beyonce,
Right.
who was also posing in some denim 2 or 3 years ago. And by the way, she was wearing a blonde wig.
Not a word.
Not a word.
Yeah.
Does that advocate the fact that she has a blonde wig, that she's a white supremacist? I mean, I don't know. It's amazing how these folks can look at an ad and say, now, how can we pick this ad to death and pick out something horrible and ugly? So it's amazing to me, but I think I agree with you. I think woke culture is on its way down the toilet
She's
bowl.
definitely started a cultural revolution.
In a
I
lot
think.
of the other thing that I saw today,
And on the Beyonce thing as well, when she did the country song, people went after her on that.
yeah, well,
So
I'm
they
not-
pick and choose,
I'm not,
you know.
I'm not a for music, but
No. But I mean,
you know me, I'm Mr. Traditionalist, right?
but you can't pick and choose. There's a double standard.
No,
obviously.
you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. The other thing that was pretty big is I just heard that. So Howard Stern, I think, is exclusively on Sirius XM.
Yeah.
I don't think he has a gig on FM or AM anymore. I think it was FM back in the day. But obviously in the 90s, he was a force to be reckoned with. He had a movie called Private Parts. He was a big deal for a while, and then he went to FM, and then COVID happened.
Yeah.
And then he got really wacky during COVID, doesn't want to, he felt like he needed to shower 5 times a day, never home.
Yeah.
Even well after a lot of the mandates were lifted, he was still pretty much an isolationist. So he's a crackpot.
Yeah.
So he went on his show the other day and said, if you're a Trump supporter, we want anything to do with you. Don't listen to the show. So guess what XM Satellite did?
I don't know.
They canceled Howard's show.
Are you serious?
They canceled his show. I'm telling
Why
you.
did I not hear this?
So
he's done?
I'm the guy that's on Politics in the Pulpit, Mike. You're just the guy.
He done?
As far as I know, I'm sure he'll probably try to find some other gig.
Yeah.
But I just find it interesting that if he would have said that 2 years
Yeah.
ago, he would not have gotten this
No.
pushback, even from XM Sirius Satellite. Think about this, Stephen Colbert.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that is because of Trump bias that he constantly invected into his show. No. Stephen Colbert is draining money from CBS. It costs way more money to produce the late night show with Stephen Colbert than he's actually bringing in. And so therefore, I think CBS, who is in the process of being purchased, basically made a fiscal decision and said, we're going to have to, it's not bringing us in money.
But the left won't say that.
No, they can't say that.
Yeah.
Because Stephen Colbert has been, in fact, when he started, he was supposed to be what's the guy's name? Bill O'Reilly.
Huh.
That was kind of a Bill O'Reilly dude.
Yeah.
And then that kind of fell through, and then he got the gig. And that was David Letterman's old.
Sullivan Theater.
That's right. That was
So
Dave-
iconic.
And now that type of old school late night is dead.
What will they put in its place?
I have
That's
no
what I'm
idea.
thinking.
I don't think Channel 4 is going to last much longer either. I forget his name right
Jimmy
now.
Fallon?
Jimmy Fallon. No, Jimmy Fallon might last. I think
Jimmy
he's on.
Fallon.
So he's on NBC.
You're
But
thinking of
who's the
Jimmy
other?
Kimmel on
Jimmy
ABC.
Kimmel is on ABC. I don't think Kimmel is going to last very much longer.
Yeah.
I think he's on his last. I think his show cost as much to produce as Stephen Colbert's was.
Yeah.
And so I think as I was growing up in the 80s, watching David Letterman to a lesser extent, I really liked Carson mostly. He was able to make jokes about people without offending half of his audience. But unfortunately,
Who, Letterman?
no, Johnny Carson.
Oh.
Johnny Carson. He was able to make fun of Reagan and still not offend all the Reagan supporters. He was able to offend Jimmy Carter back, not offend
But
all
you
the
could
Jimmy
do
Carter.
that because it was an hour show, and nobody's going to bash politicians and whatnot for a whole hour, and that's what.
It was done in fun.
Exactly,
It was done
exactly.
in good fun. It was also equal opportunity bashing. Johnny bashed both sides,
Exactly.
but he did it in a way that was or calling into question the integrity or patriotism or humanity
Yeah.
of the politician. This literally thinks
No.
Donald Trump is Hitler.
Yeah.
You know, and I think Jimmy Kimmel probably does too.
Yeah. TV was just different then. And Jay Leno, and even then it wasn't that bad. It was both sides.
Yeah.
But when Jay Leno and Fallon took over, then I think that was when things started to turn.
Yeah. Well, I spoke to Andrew Sandlin about AB 495. We're waiting for a call in here from Erin Friday. This bill was brought up at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, a couple of days ago by Pastor Jack Hibbs. And this is what the California Family Council wrote on August 4th. In a stirring and impassioned announcement before his congregation last week, Pastor Jack Hibbs of Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, issued an urgent call to action for Californians. And what is that urgent call to action? To rally and lobby against Assembly Bill 495. On the phone, we have with us Erin Friday, who is a licensed California and one of the leaders of Our Duty USA, which is an international coalition fighting to protect children from gender ideology. Gender ideology have anything to do with AB 495? Well, Erin Friday, would you tell our listeners just exactly what this bill has to do with gender-affirming care and all the other stuff that the left likes to throw our way?
Sure. Well, the bill allows anyone who is 18 and older to fill out an 8-question affidavit and claim any child in the state of California, claim temporary guardianship over the child, without showing any form of identification, without verifying any relationship with the child. It's just a one-page sheet that they hand over to the school, and the school is required to hand that child over to that stranger or 18-year-old or someone who may be a relative 5 degrees away, someone who used to be married to a family member, or someone who just knows. Nothing needs to be verified on that affidavit. It doesn't get filed with a court. It doesn't get filed with a child welfare agency. And that person then gets to consent to that child's medical intervention. That's where the transgender aspect comes in, is if the child is under the age of 14, the stranger or person who signed the affidavit can engage a medical provider for gender interventions on that child. So 14 years old, under 14, they can do surgery. So that means they can remove the breast of a 13-year-old. If the child is over the age of 14, then they can consent to surgeries if surgeries are considered saving the child's life, or the child is in danger if they don't get those surgeries. And as we well know, what the gender ideologues say is that gender interventions are life and death decisions. So that's where the trans comes into it. But the bill is also trafficker's dream. And anyone who wants to get a child, they can get a child, and anybody who wants to transition a child in the state of California can do so.
I think it's important, as what you just said, Erin Friday, that the caregiver's authorization affidavit is a one-page affidavit that they are to basically sign, that does not need a court appearance, no notarization, no consent or notification of any kind, no background check, and no verification of identity required. Is that true?
Absolutely true. In fact, the bill says that the identification that the person needs to provide is Social Security number, not the actual card, just a number. So anybody who can make up, 10 digits can make a fake Social Security number or a Medi-Cal number or another identification. Well, they don't define what another identification is. What is really horrifying, too, is that the school employees will have no liability whatsoever for handing a child over to a sex trafficker. That's what the bill says. There is no liability. There's also no liability for the that base any of their medical procedures on the consent through an affidavit. So they walk through, and then that poor parent comes looking for their child. There is no paper trail for them to find that child.
And this bill of legislation, authored by newly elected Assemblywoman Celeste Rodriguez, who, of course, Democrat, no-brainer there, out of Fernando, and she sold AB 495 as a, quote, compassionate solution for children of detained immigrant parents. Now, Erin Friday, why do these leftists like to couch their bill in a deceitful way, but in reality, the legal loopholes that this bill is creating are just absolutely horrific?
This has been part of the pattern for the Democrats for probably 3 decades, is to give a fancy name that sounds like it's protecting children. The interesting part is the name itself is, family planning. Parents don't have to sign anything before a stranger gets the child. So it's all subterfuge, and it's also to pull on the heartstrings. This bill doesn't just affect children whose parents are picked up by it.
Uh-oh. Are you there, Erin Friday?
Yeah.
I think we got a problem with Erin's connection there. Erin Friday, you there? Well, I know one thing about Erin Friday. Call right back in, Erin. Go ahead and do that because I think we might have lost you on the connection there. But what happens when a light... Are you there?
There was just an emergency line that through.
Gotcha. I'm sorry about that, but go right ahead. And you were saying?
I was saying that the bill doesn't just affect children of parents who have been picked up by ICE or are hiding from ICE. It affects all children in the state of California. In this bill that is narrowly tailored to just children of immigrants. It's any child. The stranger can come to the school and pick up a child's doing after-school sports, and the parents don't even know, it's not time to pick up that child. Someone with an affidavit can appear to that school and come and pull that child out of the sporting event, and off they go. All they need to know is the child's name and birthday. That's it. And that theirs.
Erin Friday, we have 30 seconds here. What do people need to do in the next week or so? I believe August 18th and 19th is when this is going to come to committee again. We'll do.
Well, there's going to be a committee hearing on the 19th and a lobby day that I believe Pastor Jack has organized, so people can go to Sacramento. I would do it, take the day off and come up to Sacramento and lobby on this bill. And they need to start calling. Because remember, Gavin Newsom is, purported to be now a new moderate, right? And, parental rights. So if he signs this bill, we know that he won't be president. So he needs to be aware of this bill, calling his office now and raising the alarm and show up on the 19th. We always need people up in Sacramento. Yes, it's a slog. I do it all the time. Voices matter, and the bigger the crowd, the more likely this bill is to be killed.
Erin Friday with Our Duty USA, thank you very much for all that you do. And Lord willing, I'll see you on August 19th.
All right, sounds good.
All right. We'll be back in just a minute here on your hometown station. All right, we're back here for our final segment on Politics in the Pulpit. This is your holy host, the Bishop of Santa Clarita. I want to just finish out this segment just underscoring the importance of why you should be in Sacramento on August 19th. I'm actually going to be there on that Monday. Let me check my calendar here to make sure I can actually be there. August 18th, I'll actually be there in the evening. We'll be there for the entire day on the 19th as Jack Hibbs and some other ministries are going to be coalescing around the capital state in Sacramento. And I really believe that if we as evangelical Christians and people of faith and just people that believe in sense here in California, if we're not going to take a stand on this bill, which is insidiously written to look like it's sympathetic to one group, but in actuality it's creating loopholes for another, it's an attack on the family. It's Dr. Sandlin said during our first part of the hour, every attack from these state legislatures, especially here in California, attack at the fiber of the home. The home is a father, a mother, and I mean a male father, a female mother, and a child. It's so funny I have to say that, but here we are today, and I have to. And these bills are designed to bring more and more stress around that family structure. And the way it's done, folks, is years ago we used to Hillary Clinton's book, It Takes a Village. And I guess in some ways there's some truth to that. The problem with this philosophy of It Takes a Village, I don't want anybody other than myself and my wife raising my child. I want my morals and I want my convictions instilled by me and my wife, my children. I don't want the state to ever come in and assume authoritative control over my children. And this is exactly what this bill is designed to do. But it's written in such a way to tug at your empathetic selves, right? It's written in a way, Assemblywoman Celeste of San Fernando. For those of you listening in Santa Clarita, that's just over the Newhall Pass, man. That's just down there. This Assemblywoman said this is a critical tool that will preserve California's faith. That's a lie, folks. That is an absolute lie. And it sounds innocuous and maybe even helpful, but the bill allows a court to appoint a temporary guardian for a child chosen by the child's custodial empowered individual to assume guardianship if the parent is temporarily unavailable due to immigration-related administrative action or other circumstances as the bill goes on. And the whole point is to kind of tug at your emotive heartstrings. And that this is what these bills are to do. And frankly, there are enough stupid people in our state that have an empathy not tethered to truth or reality. If your empathy is not tethered to truth and is not tethered to reality, then you are going to fall for the language in a bill like this. And this Assemblywoman Celeste, has written this bill in such a way as to tickle the untethered empathy in our society today. Allow me to give you a parable that I gave to our congregation a few weeks ago when I preached a whole series on empathy, how toxic empathy can be. Remember, every vice that God gave us can be, every virtue, that God gave us can be a vice. And empathy is one of those virtues that, if untethered from truth and untethered from reality, can be a vice. So allow me to end with this parable. Let's say that a man is drowning in a river, and apathy walks by, looks at the man drowning in the river, and says, well, it's unfortunate drowning, but it's not my problem. So apathy walks away. Now, compassion walks by. Compassion sees the man drowning and says to the man drowning, I'm going to reach in with this one arm to try to save you, but I've got to make sure my other arm is secure on something solid because I don't want to fall in with you. That's what compassion does. Compassion is tethered to truth. It's tethered to reality, and it can save the man from drowning. Only if compassion is tethered to reality. Now, what does empathy do? Empathy, if it is untethered from the truth, looks at the man drowning and says, I'm going to go with him. And what happens? You now have two victims instead of one. That is the type of empathy that this assemblywoman is targeting with the language in this bill. In fact, the language in the majority of the bills in the state of California. It is targeting people whose empathy is, in order for me to understand, I have got to jump in the river and be a victim with you. Folks, that is no way to run a family, to run a business, or to run a state. I would encourage you, many of you as can, to take that day off on August 19th, Tuesday, head up to Sacramento, go with a group, alone, whatever you got to do, get up there, stand on those steps in Sacramento, and we need to show a force of righteousness against a culture that doesn't like your play. Thanks for tuning in today on Politics Pulpit, and thanks for tuning into your hometown station. We'll catch you this same time next week here on your hometown station.